Um, Hello, everybody, and welcome to another installment of Toyventures. I am Brian, your host, and you may notice something a little different about this episode, and that is because it is an extravaganza, a star-studded event. In the terms of this video, is a little different. I thought I would do something really cool for the holiday season. And you may have noticed as well, I have a guest with me right now, and that is my pal, Jason Lenzi. And together, we form the podcast Voltron that is PodStallions. But we're not doing PodStallions right now. We're doing this crazy idea I had. And Jason, have you fully understood the concept, or should I go through
No,
it with you?
no,
Okay.
not even close.
Text messaging is a
I've had
real
text messages. I've had phone
Yeah.
conversations. I've had a team of scientists around trying to
I
lay
can't
out
believe-
blueprints, and we just haven't cracked it. So maybe you should tell us what this is.
I'm really disappointed in the boys in the lab there. I thought
I
they'd
know.
crack this, but yeah,
Most
slacking
of them are on
off.
vacation.
Yeah.
They already left for the holidays, so I'm getting the ones that are kind of dragging their heels
Oh,
to
yeah,
me.
yeah. The ones who
Yeah.
drew the short straw. I get it. The ham and eggers, as we say.
Yeah.
The concept of this episode is a phrase that came to mind. I was putting some Mego figures away, and my Conan figure fell on the ground. And I felt bad, and then I was like, oh, this guy was always on the back of the card, never on the front. And it just made me laugh. The concept, I actually think I got kind of a jingle going on in my head that I won't repeat, but this reminded me of my number one, quest as a kid was for the Human Torch. He was pictured on the back of every Mego card, but when you turned it around, it was usually a Hulk or a Spider-Man. It was very, very hard. As a kid, I never saw the Thing. I never saw Conan. These kind of things were tough to find. And I thought about doing an entire episode of my own takeaways. And then I thought it'd be really cool because these things are regional. Would you agree? Like what was abundant in my neck of the woods was not in yours.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought it would be great to hear everyone's stories of the white whale. And this is not my only one, but this, I had multiples, but on the back of a card you never saw as a kid. You had to track it down as an adult.
Yeah, I could think of a few.
Mhm.
Well, for starters, when I think of, that's actually a really good question because I think of, the back of the card thing just became such a standard thing.
Yeah, it was what is it called? They call it the cross sell.
The cross-sell thing. It just became, I don't know when it started. I don't know when it went from black and white to color or, when it went from color to action scenes or just portraits or whatever. But it became, for a certain generation, that was just the standard. And it still is. I mean, it still is mostly the standard. I remember hunting down the Mattel Flash Gordon action figures.
Right.
And, the easy ones to find were Flash and Ming and the Lizard Woman. Those were pretty basic. But it was harder and harder to find Zarkov and Beastman and Captain Arak, which was in the second wave, I think. And then, like, Voltan, Captain Arak I found as a kid, but Voltan I never found as a kid. I didn't find him till years later in a Sears when they put 4 figures in a box for Sears. But I hunted and hunted and hunted for Beastman and Zarkov. And I think I eventually found a Beastman, but I never found Zarkov in the wild. But he was there on the back of the card.
Yeah.
And then I also remember at that time my brain playing tricks on me because I could have sworn there was a Dale Arden drawn, because those weren't photos. They were drawings of the figures.
Gorgeous drawings, as I recall.
Yeah. And I could have sworn there was a Dale Arden on the back of those cards. And I don't think I'm right about that. But I hunted and hunted trying to find it anyway because I wanted a Dale to go with, or my brain told me that I saw one on the rack one time or something, but I know
It was just a
I
lizard woman. They're good at that disguise thing.
Yeah, they had a disguise thing.
I think it's really funny that Dr. Zarkov, which would be the peg warmer of peg warmers, was the one you had trouble finding. Like, that's like saying I couldn't find Professor Bergman or the bald lady Ilya from Star Trek. They were just nowhere to be found.
Yeah, I guess they really put all the money into the big lead characters, I suppose. Because he wasn't just kind of bald and had a beard. He had a tummy. He didn't. I don't think he had any accessories, so he wasn't that exciting. As far as like the Star Wars stuff went, it was always those were your keys. Looking at the back of those cards. But when there were other lines, the other one I think of is the black hole. Like I hunted high and low to find that Sentry robot. I didn't really care about the I didn't care as much about the human figures. I found them a lot, and I got Maximilian, and I think I got Vincent. I never found old Bob. I don't know if I even looked for him, but I couldn't find. I eventually found the Sentry robot, but I couldn't find him for the longest time.
Yeah,
like you really had to go through,
the Borg
racks and racks. Yeah.
Actually, you know what? I gotta be honest with you. One of them, I think it was Durant or Borgnine, I was freaking out to find because he was like not in my town. I couldn't find him, and he showed up at a clearance that had the humanoid and Star, and I grabbed him. I grabbed all the remaining cast, and I was really upset. There was a wall of these things, and there was still no old Bob. So old Bob for me was another one that I just didn't have as a kid. I had every figure in that line but old Bob. So that brings up.
I mean, we didn't get the humanoid.
No,
we didn't get the Star robot, and I don't think we got old Bob either.
No, that was like the three, and I don't know what you should have led with old Bob. Like wave one should have been old Bob, but they didn't do it.
Yeah.
I never understood that. And you just brought up another memory I had, which was my dad used to sell Action Jacksons. He bought them on closeout from Parkdale Novelty, and he had skids of them, just pallets and pallets of them. The suits, everything. He was selling them to variety stores, and I wanted the black AJ really, really badly. And it was on the box, and he looked really cool. And I think my dad just you go through every case if you want. And I went through every case, and there wasn't a single one in those boxes.
Wow.
And I talked to Morris Kotzer of Parkdale Novelty years and years later because I had to know. And he's like, "Oh, I didn't order that one." So I was going through pallets and pallets as a kid of a toy he did not order and was not in the assortment. So even though it was on every package, it was never there. And they also did that with the 12-inch Spider-Man. They put a 12-inch Mr. Fantastic advertisement on the box. No intention of making it. But was that on my list? Huge, as I mentioned with the Human Torch.
Yeah, a lot of the Mego stuff just wasn't. I wasn't that rabid of finding that stuff, so I wasn't as keen. I wasn't aware of what was sort of happening. The back of the Star Trek cards. All those you could kind of find. But the aliens, I don't ever recall seeing the alien ones on the shelf even. I know I wanted some of them, but I don't think I ever recall walking past them, at a store.
I saw a Talos hanging at Eaton's as a kid, and it was there for a while. And I used to turn the card around, and I'd look at all the other characters and go, "Oh yeah, that's cool. But I didn't want the short little bald man in a clown suit. As a kid, I thought wrongly, as I thought Star Trek was real as a kid, or I thought Star Trek was
it was a documentary
set in the 60s or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I thought that was Dr. Severn from The Way to Eden. Because it was.
Oh, because he's on the Enterprise playset. He's on one of the screens on the Enterprise playset.
Is he? Oh wow!
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but I just was. I just was a big fan of that. I think you're right. I think it's like a very artistic interpretation of him. But
yeah, it's like his profile and that big ear.
Yeah.
One of the screens is the Telosian or whatever with the big.
So when I started collecting, I did go through life for a short time. And this was back when there was no reference books or anything like that. You were just trying to figure out what was made, thinking there was a Dr. Severn Mego. So to your Dale Arden point, I saw it as a kid. I thought it was real.
Yeah?
Yeah. I wanted to introduce some of the other folks I've asked worldwide, Jason. I hope you'll join me for this. We've got some YouTube folks I know, some friends of yours and mine, some colleagues, and just some people I kind of admire, bringing forth their white whales for this special. So let's take a look at that.
When Hasbro brought their G.I. Joe A Real American Hero toy line into the UK in 1987, they rebranded the line as Action Force International Heroes. And the first wave included 20 different action figures. And I was obsessed with this line and I wanted to collect every single figure before the end of Christmas 1987. And everyone tried to help me. Parents, grandparents, uncles, aunties, everyone was trying to buy me gifts for my birthday and for Christmas to try and round out that set of 20 figures. But I only ever got 19 of them. And the one that escaped was the elusive White Ninja Storm Shadow. And as it transpired, I only finally acquired this action figure around 4 years ago. It was a pursuit that lasted several decades and I have now finally completed that set of 20 action figures. But at the same time in my childhood, I was also really into Coleco's Rambo and the Force of Freedom toy line. And I never had a distinct desire to collect that entire run. I had all of the bad guys, I had all 6 characters from Savage, and I had Rambo and Colonel Troutman. But there was one other figure that I really wanted, and he also eluded me in 1987. And it just so happens to be another damn White Ninja. White Dragon is the good guy ninja in the Coleco Rambo toy line, with Black Dragon being a member of the bad guys. But no matter how hard I looked around in toy stores in the UK in 1987, I could just never get my hands on this action figure. So for me, 1987, I was 10 years old, and it will always be remembered as the year of the elusive White Ninja.
Okay, here's the scoop. I don't like talking about it because it's a bit painful. We go back to 1990, okay? A certain Playmates line. Not the Playmates line you're thinking of. No, not the Ninja Turtles. We're talking Dick Tracy. Yeah, that's right, because if you look at the back of the card of those Dick Tracy figures, you're going to find one figure on there that was impossible to find, unless you were super lucky somehow. No. I'm talking about the blank. That's a figure that looked so cool that you had to have it. And yet, everywhere you looked, all you had was weird plasticine-looking replicas of the people that were in the film. But could you find the blank? No, you couldn't. It's a conspiracy theory, and it scarred me for years. But guess what? I got lucky, and I found one when I was a big grown-up boy. That's right, I shelled out the money, and I got the dolly I wanted. I see why they didn't want to let that figure out there. It kind of spoiled the whole movie. But anyways, I got it. That's all from me. Don't talk to me about it again. I don't want to bring up these memories.
What is up? I'm Andy.
And I'm Amy.
And we're from Dark Ride Dracula here on YouTube. A toy I always wanted as a kid. I was a pretty spoiled kid, so I got most of the toys that I wanted. But one that comes to mind is I really wanted the Thundercats Thunder Tank. And my cousin got it, but I wasn't allowed to play with it. My cousin sucks, and I got the Thunder Tank, so...
You won in the end.
I still won.
And I have a similar story. I had a cousin who, we both loved Ninja Turtles, but my cousin had the Universal Monsters ones. And I was so bent out of shape that I didn't have the Creature from the Black Lagoon one. And I asked my parents, I said, I want this, we gotta find it. They couldn't find it. I think it was a few years after the fact anyway, which didn't help. So that was my one. And now, as an adult, I'm actually still looking for it.
See that? Check out our channel at darkeyeddracula.com here on YouTube, and you will find lots of cool, if you're into 50s and 60s mid-century modern monsters and classic monsters and dark rides and fun classic monster stuff, you'll love our channel. And yeah.
Join us on our quest for more toys.
Hey, toy and collectible fans, it's David Weiner. You can check me out at itcamefromblog.com. I'm also the director of the In Search of Darkness movies and other stuff. But first and foremost, I'm an overgrown kid and I love toys. And so when I think of my childhood and I think about some of the toys that got away, well, there's probably too many to mention. But I will single out that I was a huge $6 Million Man appreciator. I loved the show. I wanted to rename my last name Austin and call myself Steve Austin. And the toy that I always wanted but could never have was the Venus Deathprobe. Now, I don't recall seeing it on the back of the box advertising that we were going to be getting that at some point. But I do remember seeing it in a catalog at some point, and it was a rumored thing that was around, but it was very hard to find. And listen, I begged my parents for Maskatron, and I begged my parents for Bionic Bigfoot, and so I always coveted the Venus Deathprobe, but never got around to getting it. And I want to have a bonus, a little element, one more. There was the Battlestar Galactica Land Ram. That was a hard to find item that I knew existed. It was rumored. It turned out to be true. Up in Canada, they had a couple. But ever since Gun on Planet Zero, I think it was the second episode of Battlestar Galactica, I had to have a Land Ram toy. That, of course, is a pretty penny if you want that now. But anyway, collecting is fun because you can rekindle your childhood and you can get some of these things back, but the difference between men and boys are the price of their toys, right?
Back in 1976 or 77, I'm in Child World with my mom. But sadly, I'm not there to get a toy for me. We are shopping for a birthday present for a friend. And just before we're checking out, at the register, there is this small rack of cheap rack toys for all intensive purposes. And what I see there staring at me is a sight I have never forgotten to this day. It was a figure of Ghostrider. It was a cheap little rack toy, probably cheaper than $1, and it's Ghostrider on a motorcycle with his cool midnight blue jumpsuit. The motorcycle, I believe, was either chrome or bright red, and there was this cool little head that you could swap out that was Johnny Blaze. And the card art was straight from the Ghostrider comic book. Now, I didn't read Ghostrider religiously at that time. I was too young, but I had a few issues in my collection. I knew who he was. He was a stunt motorcycle rider with a flaming skull for a head who worked for Satan. Now, of course, I asked my mom, please, can I get this? And of course, she says no. If she had said yes, I wouldn't be telling you this story. And to this day, that is the one and only time I have ever seen that toy in real life. Now, this toy, of course, I later learned was the Fleetwood Ghostrider toy. And of course it goes for crazy amounts of money. So sadly I have to say, the only way I'd get that toy in my collection now is I'd have to sell my soul for it. Well, if you're going to sell your soul to the devil, please allow me to make the introductions. If you'd like to hear more tales of my sad youth, or perhaps hear me talk about old monster toys, vintage comic books, psychotronic cinema, what have you, come join me over at Dr. Durant's Sanctum on YouTube. And I'd like to thank the Plaidstallion himself, Brian Heiler, for having me here and inviting me to tell this tale of woe. Until next time, my friends.
Hail Satan!
I'm Mysterian.
I'm Lucky Number 9.
And we're Toy Surprise.
Toy Surprise.
So the toy that I've always wanted and could never find was Cyborg from the Superpowers collection, 1986, the rarest one of the line. Never saw him anywhere. until a few years later when I didn't care. And I found a dump bin of them at Consumers Distributing for like $1 or $2 a piece. And then even more recently at a local comic shop, they had one for $200 and I didn't buy it, but I still don't have them and wish I always did to finish the collection. What about you?
I grew up in a small town. We didn't get very many toys. I did have Mego Spider-Man, and I would build abandoned warehouses out of cardboard boxes and put in like netting and trapdoors and all kinds of stuff. But I wanted a villain for him to fight, and I wanted the Green Goblin like so bad. But what happened was I found, I was gifted a Western character, and he was 8 inches, so it looked correct. And I made him a little outfit and everything, and I turned him into Kraven the Hunter.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so I made do.
Made do. What's that behind your ear? It's mine.
Jerk.
Hello, welcome to my basement of horror. Brian asked me to tell you a story about the one that got away. A toy that I wanted in childhood, but never got. I was very fortunate in childhood. I was spoiled, at least when it comes to toys. Not in other ways, but when it comes to toys. I had most everything I wanted. In fact, I cannot think of a single significant toy that was near and dear to my heart. One that I begged for and really, really wanted. I cannot think of a single one that I asked for that I didn't get. Either from my mom and dad, or my grandparents, or through my own allowance buying it myself. Virtually every toy that was really important to me, I got. Now that's not to say that there weren't toys I wanted and didn't have. I never got a Hypnos to fight my Pulsar. I never got a Dragoon to fight my Shogun Godzilla. I would have liked the rest of the Fantastic Four to pal around with my Mego Ben Grimm. I never got the other three, but I got my favorite, the Thing. So there were a few things that I would have liked to have had that I never got. But none of these were traumatic. None of these scarred my soul. It would have been nice to get them, but I'm not haunted by the fact that I never had them as a child. But there is a story of the one that got away. And it is a story that is heartbreaking, gut-wrenching, a tale of childhood existential trauma that I'm going to relate to you now. It's not a toy that I never had. It's a toy that I had very briefly for a few days, only to have it torn from my arms, and then thought I was going to get it back, expected to get it back, but I was never reunited with this toy. And it was a traumatic experience. So it's the one that got away, but I had it briefly, and then it was taken away. I'm a monster kid, and of course, if you've ever watched my channel, Raymond Castile's Basement of Horror, my YouTube series, then you know that I'm all about monsters, monsters, monsters. And a lot of the toys I had as a child were, in fact, monster toys. But that doesn't mean that monsters were the only thing I liked. I was also a Star Wars kid, like every other Gen X kid in the 70s. I loved Star Wars. And I remember that year that Star Wars came out, and there weren't any toys, and everyone wanted action figures and other kinds of toys. And Kenner was late getting them out. They didn't know the movie was going to be such a big hit. So it wasn't until 1978 that we finally started getting some Star Wars toys. And I was really excited, as was every other kid. And I remember walking through an aisle in Kmart and seeing this display for stuffed Chewbacca dolls and R2-D2 dolls. a plush Chewbacca, a plush R2-D2. I remember that cardboard display. It was an open box with a standee kind of behind it, a Kenner display, and the dolls were right there. You could grab them and take them out. And I just instantly fell in love with that Chewbacca. I mean, I liked Chewbacca in the movie, but it wasn't because of the character so much. It was the toy. The toy was just so adorably cute. Even if I didn't even know who the character was, I did. But even if I had not, I would have loved this toy just as a toy. So I fell in love with this Chewbacca toy. I just had to have one. And eventually, I got the Chewbacca doll, the stuffed Chewbacca, and my brother got the stuffed R2-D2. And I remember just being in love with that Chewbacca. He had these cute little blue eyes and this little puppy dog nose and this pink smile that was hidden underneath his fur. So he looked gruff on the outside, but if you got to know him a little bit and you cared enough and you moved that fur away, you saw his beautiful little pink smile underneath. I loved him. It was like having a real pet. And I hugged him. Took him everywhere. I don't know if I took him to school or not, but I was inseparable for a few days with this Chewbacca. I just loved that stuffed Chewbacca doll. It was like the favorite thing I'd ever gotten. Now, since childhood, I've had ear problems. Chronic ear infections. I've had partial deafness since childhood, and in recent years, I've got tinnitus added to the problems I already had. But in childhood, I had very serious ear infections that were recurring. And a few days after I got this Chewbacca doll, I developed an ear infection. And it was gross. There were liquids draining out of my ears, drizzling down my neck and on my shirt. It was bad. There were blisters forming behind my ears like Frankenstein, the true story. It was a very bad scene, very disgusting. That in itself was traumatic. My mother assumed that because I'd just gotten the Chewbacca doll, I must be having an allergic reaction to that doll. And I tried to convince her, no, I have these problems all the time. It's not because of Chewbacca. I've had this for years. And she said, no, you just got this doll, and now your ears are erupting. It must be an allergy to this doll. And I just cried, said, oh, please don't take my Chewbacca away. And she said, well, we won't take him away. He'll just go up into the attic for a little while, let's say a month, just so we see what happens with your ears. And if they clear up, then we'll take him down. And then if they stay clear, then you can have the Chewbacca back. But for now, just for safety, we're going to put Chewbacca up in the attic. And I had this, in the home, I had this hallway, and the attic was on the ceiling at the end of the hallway. And this will be important in a minute. So I remember my dad putting the ladder up on the end of the hall, climbing up there with my Chewbacca. I think they wrapped him up in a pillowcase or something, and opening the attic door and stuffing him in there and closing it again. And so that's where, in my mind, that's where my Chewbacca was. So for the next several weeks, all I could think about was my poor Chewbacca up in that lonely attic. And I actually wrote letters to my Chewbacca. I said, I hope you're doing okay. I think about you all the time. Don't feel that you're alone. I'm waiting for you. I'll be so happy when you return. Just a little while, you'll be coming back. So hang tight, Chewbacca. And I probably gave those letters to my mom, and who knows where where those went. It was like sending a letter to Santa. Who knows where they go. But anyway, I was writing letters to my Chewbacca, trying to keep his spirits up, thinking that they were going up into the attic, and he was reading them. And I remember one letter I was saying, only a few more days, and you'll come back down. And I was going to line all of my toys up on either side of the hallway. So imagine this long hallway with all my toys, my stuffed toys, my action figures, all lined up on the sides like a parade, so that Chewbacca would triumphantly come down the ladder from the attic, and he would I could imagine this stuffed toy marching down the hallway with all the toys cheering on either side as he marched down right into my loving arms to cherish him forever. That was my fantasy. Well, the infection went away, but then it came back. And so I told my mom, well, look, Chewbacca's still in the attic, and now the infection's come back, so it obviously wasn't him. He's not to blame. This is just something that's wrong with me. So this proves that he did not start that reaction. It's not an allergic reaction to him, so he's innocent. So he can come down now. And then my mother said, oh, we took him back to the store. You know, like the day after they put him in the attic, we returned him to the store. He's not there anymore. Sorry. Now, this tore my heart apart. This is like Lon Chaney at the end of The Unknown when he finds that he cut his arms off for nothing. This is like Toni Collette finding her headless daughter in the car. This was like The Scream. This was a moment of existential horror and tragedy and grief for me as a child. And of course I cried and cried. I couldn't believe how my parents betrayed me and I would never see my Chewbacca again. And I didn't know what became of him. Did he end up, when they returned him, did the store throw him in the trash? Did he end up in a landfill? Or was he in the arms of some other child out there somehow? Did they repackage him and put a new tag on him? Was he living a happy life with some other kid? Where is he? What's going on with him? Maybe he's buried under garbage in a dump somewhere. I was just filled with horror at the whole situation. And I never really got over that. I mean, even now when I think about it, it still tugs at me to this day. It's an inanimate object, this doll, but it had a life for me, as almost all things do. I kind of have that philosophy that all things are sort of alive. But that stands out as something that, in a sense, got away from me, and I thought I was going to get it, and I didn't get it. So later, when I started collecting, one of the first things I got was this Chewbacca doll. So this is an example of the same doll I had briefly as a child. And that bag he's in is the original factory bag. I've never removed him from this bag. And there's a reason for that, because in my mind, being in this bag, it's like he's Schrodinger's Chewbacca. It's like flipping a coin and it lands on the edge of the coin, but before it falls over on one side or the other, you freeze time. So it's frozen forever, never landing on one side or the other. This completely unused Chewbacca, this is pre-retail. In other words, it's in the state it was in before it ever made it to a retail store. It's almost like a moment frozen in time, like a moment that could lead to a parallel timeline where this toy could have been my Chewbacca. It could have been the one that I picked out instead of the one that I actually did. This toy could have been in some child's arms in the 70s. It's like a question mark. It's a possibility that it's almost like someone being frozen the moment before they die. So they're never really alive and they're never really dead, like a vampire. They're just kind of frozen in that moment. And as someone who likes vampires, this is kind of like a vampire Chewbacca. It's frozen in time. It's like it represents possibilities that never happened, like a what if. And if I take it out of this bag, then that spoils all of that. So as long as it's in this bag, it kind of symbolically represents part of my childhood that never happened or could have happened a different way. So there's a lot of drama in this Chewbacca. And the more I think about it, the more vampiric it seems. But that's good. I'm all about the vampiric. That's fine with me. So that's my story of the one that got away, and a moment eerily frozen in time, stuck forever, like a moment of tragedy just before it happened. There's a Twilight Zone story, the 80s Twilight Zone, where there's a mother who's able to stop time, and there's a nuclear war, and the missiles are falling, and she yells, "Stop," and she stops time, and she walks out into the street, and she sees one of the missiles about to hit her town, and she knows if she starts time up again, everyone's going to die, so she could just live out her life with everybody frozen and these missiles just about to hit. So that's what, symbolically, that's what this is. Merry Christmas! Isn't that a happy story? Fantastic. I hope you enjoyed this story. And if you want to hear more creepy, depressing stories, just watch Raymond Castile's Basement of Horror. And you'll get 90 minutes of this. Raymond Castile's Basement of Horror on YouTube. Thanks.
So there you have it, folks. That is my holiday special, the always on the back, never on the front show. I want to thank everyone who joined us, especially you, Jason, because we never do this kind of video stuff. We are mainly a radio guy.
I love this. It's lovely to see your face.
Oh yeah, no, it's great to see you as well. It's been a while. I don't ever.
Can you believe we still look this good?
Yeah, I'm happy for that. I sometimes I've got my grandma's genes. She had blonde hair until she died at 90, and I'm hoping to have hair when I'm 90.
Yeah. Knock on wood. Knock on wood. Well, this is a fun thing. You could really play with the sort of my mind playing tricks on me kind of thing. A buddy recently brought by the old Montgomery Ward catalog, and it had some things in it that I was like, oh my God, that I know I had this, but until I saw the photo, had no way of knowing, no remembrance of it whatsoever, or it wasn't the way I remembered. Yeah. And I love this kind of, because it does play a lot with memory. And
well, I think you just came up with the theme of the next one of these shows I want to do, which is schoolyard, like toys you thought existed as a child.
Right.
I think you hit on a vein, like for an immediate sequel to this, and I really like that.
I've got a Grand Moff Tarkin. No, you don't. No, I do. I totally do. My dad found it at a Hardware Hank, and I tell you, they had like 3 of them, but I got it. I know I got it. It's like,
I grew up with a kid who had he had a Mego flash, and it shot sparks, but it's at the cottage. Right. Everything was at the cottage.
I can't. You know what? We lent it to Smithsonian right now, so I probably can't get it back till the end of the year. So yeah.
Okay. When I finally got invited to that cottage, for a brief time, I was left alone in there, and I went through the closet just to see. Okay, I want to see these awesome toys. You know what I found? A Soupy sales coloring book.
Did I say a Flash figure that sparked? I meant
a Soupy
sales coloring book that was half colored in.
I was 11 and was like, who the hell is Soupy Sales? I immediately deduced he was a children's show. The coloring book. But it was like really kind of a letdown. I also think I found one of those like K-Tel funny favorites records,
Yeah,
like
see, you could
Snoopy and the Red Baron on it. Yeah.
This is endless. You could have a lot of fun with it.
Oh, yeah,
those were interesting. Those were interesting tales from the toy side.
I really enjoyed this, and I want to
Yeah.
thank everybody who joined me on this. Please check out their channels; they're in the description below. I'm going to try and return and do a video before Christmas, but I think we should give a very hearty Happy Holidays and Merry Christmas from the PodStallions show.
Yes, happy holidays, happy Christmas, peace and love to everyone from me and this kid. This kid wanted to say hi. He's been licking my legs the whole time we were doing this. So
They always know. Yeah, they always know.
knows when I'm
Hey,
busy.
Bowie. Yeah.
Big
I
happy
don't
holidays.
have Jessie here. She's been asleep for about 3 hours. So
Thank you guys.
thanks, guys.
Thanks for asking, Brian.
Hey, no, thanks for joining me. All
I
right.
can't wait to see it. Okay,
Yeah,
man.
me too. I can't wait to edit it. Cheers.
Peace. Good stuff.
Before we go, I'd like to ask you, what was your white whale as a kid, the figure that got away? Let me know here in the comments or in the PodStallions Facebook group. Love to hear from you.